Hello, my little ducklings. I'm here to read you Chapter 11 of Race to the Moonrise. His rabbit fur blanket crushed under the frost crust when Longlegs woke. The eastern sky was already crimson. "Wake up, Little Basket. We have to get to the mesas of the cliff dwellers in less than 5 days. If she were in good health, that would be no problem, he thought. Firekeeper came over, looking concerned when he saw the weary Little Basket. "Take care of her, Longlegs. I'm sorry I can't go with you, but I'm heading north with the others towards Finger Rock. I'm too old to make the detour you have made. Just follow the main trail west and then head north when Rock Mountain becomes visible to the southwest." Longlegs had hoped that Firekeeper would accompany them in case the guard from the canal's people medicine man was still pursuing them. He sighed and helped Little Basket arrange her pack. He put the moon rabbit bowl and the clay ball player in his own pack and said as merrily as possible, "Good thing we only have one more place to trade. We don't need any more weight." But Little Basket only looked at him with vacant eyes. Longlegs resented every step as it led them in the opposite direction of their destination. Several times he stopped, resolved to turn around and go to Finger Rocks without the mug that they needed from the cliff dwellers. Each time, however, he visualized Thunder Voice peering at Little Basket's offering, rage in his face upon discovering the mug's absence. Fear of what he'd do to Little Basket kept Longlegs moving forward towards the mesas of the cliff dwellers. As the autumn sun rose over the golden desert, it reflected hot off a sandstone cliff that paralleled the traveler's route much of the morning. Picture carvings covered the rock, most very warm but a few freshly pecked. An isolated boulder lay close to the trail. "Let's rest under the shade of this boulder, Little Basket. We can look at the old picture carvings." Little Basket slumped in the shade while Longlegs inspected the carvings. He heard a rustling movement on the other side of the rock. A rattlesnake slithered from behind the rock towards Little Basket. "Don't move, Little Basket," Longlegs whispered. "The snake won't bother us if we don't frighten it." Something had already frightened it, he thought. He cautiously crept along the boulder, careful not to disturb the snake. He peeked around the corner. Suddenly a shape moved from behind the boulder. A shirtless man with tattoos covering his face, arms, and chest stepped out in front of them. He held a drawn bow, the arrow aimed at Little Basket. Squawk, sitting on Little Basket's pack, screeched nervously. "I finally found you children alone," he rasped. "That stupid bird makes it impossible to sneak up behind you. Nobody gets away with humiliating the great medicine man of the canal people. He will be pleased to get the red bird back to sacrifice. Its death will give him even more powers." The guard glanced at Little Basket, slumped weakly against the boulder. "He will also enjoy knowing that the ungrateful child who stole part of his payment is not so well anymore. In fact, it will give me great pleasure to tell him that both of your bodies are nothing more than raven food." "Don't do it," said Longlegs quietly. "If you make a sudden move, that rattlesnake next to your foot will strike." The tattooed man's thin lips curled into a wicked grin. "The boy thinks he knows he can fool me. This will make your killing even more pleasurable." A rattling noise at his feet distracted him. The snake was coiled, ready to strike. Its flat, triangular head weaved slightly back and forth as if taking aim at the man's muscular calf. A forked tongue flicked in and out. "Get a rock and kill it!" the man cried, frozen with the bow in his hand. Longlegs hesitated. He knew they'd be killed if he saved him. The guard obviously knew what was going through Longlegs' head. He suddenly whirled sideways and shot an arrow at the snake. As the arrow harmlessly struck the sand, the rattler struck. The guard grabbed his legs, screaming in pain and horror. "Run, Little Basket!" Longlegs grabbed her hand and pulled her away, going around the man and the snake at a safe distance. He then raced back for the packs and Squawk. The guard reached out a tattooed hand and grabbed Longlegs' ankle as he retreated. Longlegs wrenched free and kicked sand at the guard. The man clawed at his eyes as he writhed on the ground and screamed curses at Longlegs. When they could no longer hear his cries, Longlegs stopped running and made Little Basket rest. She talked a little, and Longlegs could not read her face. It seemed absent of emotion. Was the poison of the giant lizard still in her blood? Was the fatigue from the trip or the fear of the tattooed man? Were the gods talking to her? Whatever it was, Longlegs knew that they had to move quickly, get the mug from the cliff dwellers, and get to the moonrise ceremony without killing Little Basket doing it. After a few minutes, the two resumed a slow jog forward. Looming in the hazy distance to the southwest was a huge isolated rock. "That must be Rock Mountain, Little Basket. We'll camp as soon as the sun goes down and be at the mesas of the cliff dwellers in 2 days." Little Basket did not appear to hear him. Longlegs got behind her and winced when he saw her shuffling along as fast as she could. Her skinny legs looked like little sticks below the big pack. He stopped and tied her sleeping mat and the cotton cape of the volcano people to the top of his pack. There was a little left in her pack, but extra sandals, some dried meat, sunflower seeds, piñon nuts, a bladder bag of water, and her rabbit fur blanket. Longlegs tied the water bag to his pack and made the dishevelished Squawk ride on his pack. He wanted to make his sister's pack as light as possible. Across the high desert, Longlegs could see smoke filling the broad valley to the northeast. There must be more people living there than I've seen in a lifetime, he thought. He longed to head straight for the towns ahead, but they knew they had to climb the mesas to the north. Toward nightfall the next day, they couldn't find even a stunted juniper to sleep under. "Look at all these stumps, Little Basket. There's hardly a living tree to be seen." As Little Basket slept fitfully on her rabbit fur blanket, Longlegs stared at the huge mesa to the north, trying to imagine what the people were like who were moving into the cliff caves. He tried to think of anything but sleep. He knew the guard was probably disabled or dead, but he was still nervous. "Help me listen for unusual noises," he told Squawk as the bird snuggled next to the girl's head. Longlegs promptly fell asleep. The next morning was colder than the one before. Longlegs felt sorry for Little Basket as she shivered in the dim light while trying to put her rabbit fur blanket around her slim shoulders and under the cumbersome pack. Although she had slept most of the night, she did not respond to her brother's attempt at conversation. They followed the main trail north to the small river. Its broad bed told of a time when the river had run much wider. The path followed the river northeast. As they came closer to it, the mesa didn't look like a single landmass anymore. Instead, a series of long, skinny fingers snaked south towards them. In mid-afternoon, Longlegs spotted a trail veering towards one of the mesas. "I don't know where the cliff dwellers live. We'll just hope this trail takes us to them. It will be a steep climb, Little Basket," Longlegs said worriedly. "Steep climb!" shrieked Squawk as they left the well-worn path along the river. Little Basket stumbled frequently and had to rest often as they climbed the rocky trail. Longlegs noticed that even many of the shrubby little trees on the steep slope had been cut. The sun was setting when they finally reached the mesa top. After giving Little Basket some water, Longlegs allowed himself to look around. In wonder, he saw that the entire mesa was covered with fields of corn, beans, and squash. People were stooped over in the fields, gathering the harvest in huge baskets hung on their backs with forehead straps. Scattered among the fields were clusters of rock houses 1 to 3 stories high, some in ruins, others with people, dogs, and turkeys milling about. Hardly a juniper or pinyon tree was in sight. A polite cough behind him startled Longlegs. A young man with a digging stick stood a short ways from him and Little Basket. Although he looked sympathetically at the exhausted girl, he held the stick as if to defend himself. In sign language, he asked Longlegs where they were from and what they were doing. Longlegs attempted to answer in the language of the people of the far north. "We have come from a village a long way from the south. We need to trade for a fine mug of the cliff dwellers in order to offer it at Moonrise ceremony at Finger Rocks. My sister is sick and needs food and rest. Will you help us?" The young man seemed intrigued with Longlegs' accent. "You speak our language well for a foreigner. Follow this path north along the rim. I'll tell you when to stop." Longlegs helped his sister to her feet and steadied her along the trail until she was sure she was stable. The man followed behind them. Where the mesa began its slope towards the rim, Longlegs noticed that every little gully had several little dams with piled rocks spanning it. Upslope from each dam, several corn plants were growing in the soil that had been washed down. The man behind Longlegs noticed his interest and said, "Each year we lose more soil as the rain washes it away. Some say it's because we've cut all the trees and there's nothing to hold it anymore. We keep trying to keep the soil on the mesa with these little dams and plant some of our crops behind them." Longlegs thought the corn plants looked spindly and unhealthy compared to the corn he picked at home during harvest time. Up ahead, Longlegs saw a group of rock buildings. The young farmer behind him said, "The village leaders assemble here. We'll tell them you're here." All Longlegs wanted to do was get Little Basket fed and rested, but he was in no position to argue. He gently told Little Basket to turn towards the buildings. A black and white long-haired dog trotted happily over to Little Basket, but she stared straight ahead as if she saw nothing. "Turn into this room." The two stooped into a T-shaped doorway. Longlegs adjusted his eyes to the dim light and choked involuntarily on the smoke. He saw several men clustered at the fire hearth in the center of the room, squatting in the same position all people did in low-ceiling rooms. Their voices seemed strained. He caught a few words and guessed they were arguing about water. The young man with the digging stick said, "Many of our springs are drying up where we get our drinking water. Some people are moving down into the cliff overhanging where the springs are to protect them from other villagers. The village leaders disagree on who should be closest to the springs and control the water. Also, our crops aren't doing well, and the people don't want to share their food like they used to." The young man looked worried. "Bands of hungry strangers have been stealing from the villages in the valley below. It's thought that we can better protect our stored food in the cliffs away from strangers and perhaps away from each other." The men looked startled when they glanced up at Longlegs and Little Basket. An older man with wild gray hair motioned to them with a withering arm to take off their packs and squat down with him. He smiled kindly at Little Basket. Longlegs noticed that most of his teeth were worn down to the gums. Squawk flew off Longlegs' shoulder and landed on the old man's head. He laughed and tried to pet the bird, who immediately nipped his fingers. Longlegs explained the reason for their visit. "I know where you may find a perfect mug for the offering," the elder said. "Your sister can rest here while I take you there. We will feed her. Then she'll sleep easily with the drone of all these serious men talking about local matters." Longlegs settled Little Basket in the corner on her blanket with a bowl of corn mush. The long-haired dog had followed her in and curled up next to her. Little Basket looked at it blankly, yet flung her arm over it when she lay down. Longlegs followed the man outside and towards the cliff, noticing that one of the elder's legs was shorter than the other. As if he sensed the question, the man said, "I don't like the idea of moving off the mesa from our cozy house and into the miserable overhangings in the cliff. I broke my leg falling off this hand-toe hole trail several years ago. These places aren't fit for anyone but the young and foolish. Here's the trail. Be careful climbing down. I'll go first." The man disappeared over the cliff. So we didn't finish chapter 11 because it's a really long one. But I will finish it next time I see you, or you see me, actually, on YouTube. As always, sending you lots and lots of love, and I wish you well.